Welcome back once again. So we were talking about this equation, what this equation conveys to us, was what goes into the software and what we get out of the software. We are following a backward approach as to what would be the outcome. This is going to be the outcome. Through your entire time series analysis, you should be in a position to write this equation. It is as simple as that. But there are several surprises waiting for us when we go through different stages of time series analysis. It's not as simple as putting a data into the software and it is going to give you this. Definitely without any data cleaning and reading, if you put something into the software, it is definitely going to give you some, but it is not going to make any sense. So at the end of carrying out your time series analysis, touching upon various concepts, various surprises, various stumbles which will come on the way, you should be in a position to achieve this. If I read this equation in a simple and a plain language, I say that this is an equation of univariate time series, and today's series is dependent upon its own past lagged values, right? So univariate. It's important to understand what I'm trying to convey here. Univariate time series analysis takes into account its own previous values for making projections for the future. Okay. It does not take into account the impact of other variables which can also have an effect on this time series. This is called as univariate. With an example, let's understand this. Coming back again to GDP. GDP forecast is a concern for all of us. Fine. If I want to make forecast of GDP on the basis of its own past lagged values. Lagged values means previous values. Lag 1 means previous days GDP or last quarter's GDP. Lag 2 means last 2 quarters GDP can help me make a projection for the future GDP, right? So that is the concept of lag here. So what I'm doing is I'm making a forecast of GDP on the basis of its own values and my story ends here. But do you think I'm making a realistic assumption? You may agree or disagree with me. I will follow this approach. There is a reasoning for this. Other way of finding out or making a projection for GDP to most of our minds is that GDP is not only affected by its own values, it's affected by several other things. Does Sensex have, Sensex being one of them? Sensex has an important relationship with GDP. Inflation rate has important relationship with GDP. Negative relationship with GDP. Increase in employment, increase in IIP, increase in foreign trade, right? Similarly, rupee depreciation, changes in prices on international markets for oil and other imports has an implication on GDP. So that makes more sense to us, that GDP effect depends upon A, B, C, D, E, F, as many number of factors. So when I want to find out an impact of several factors on one variable, that is called as a multivariate analysis. Okay. When I want to find out the impact of one factor on another factor, let's say I just want to simplify my analysis and say that GDP depends upon Sensex. That's it. I don't want to carry out my further analysis. I have found the best variable which can have an impact on GDP. So that analysis is called as bivariate analysis. To understand this, when we do not take into account the impact of other factors which can affect this particular time series of our concern, that is called as a univariate analysis. Okay, and time series analysis is going to solve our problem here. We should have a problem. We should have an objective. Why I want to forecast GDP? Why I want to forecast Sensex? Why I want to forecast IIP? Right? So there has to be a proper rationale. One fine day I'm waking up and just putting my numbers into a software for no reasoning. So my entire effort should be guided or should be an outcome of something big that I want to achieve. There must be some strong objective behind carrying out the analysis in the first place. So right kind of a justification, right kind of a reasoning, right kind of an impact your results can have on various stakeholders, be it government, policymakers, investors, companies, or you as an individual or anybody, right? So your analysis should be of relevance to somebody if it is backed by a proper reasoning, proper justification to start with. Okay. So coming back here, we are doing univariate analysis. And in this equation, I can very well read, there is no other variable which is listed. I am saying today's price, let's take an example of a stock price of, let's say, Reliance. Okay, and I have a time series data of Reliance stock prices for last, let's say, 365 days. So I have a huge set of data points with me. So for last 1 year, I have daily data of Reliance Industries, and I have an interest in knowing this. I want to know, after this Facebook deal that we are hearing so much, how is the price of Reliance going to move in times to come? That could be of interest to me as an investor. And Reliance being a very large cap company, if the price of Reliance really goes higher and higher, it's definitely going to give a positive sentiment to the entire stock market, and that can have an implication for a larger other sections also, even if they are not the direct investors into Reliance. So those can be the kind of justifications to initiate my analysis or my work into this area, right? So what I have is, I have a time series of Reliance for last 365 days, daily data, and definitely there will not be 365 data points, being Friday and Saturday being holidays on stock market and some other holidays. So roughly it could be around 250 data points, right, of Reliance. And I don't want to know what other factors are affecting the movement of Reliance stock prices, because if I get into all that, I will have to devote more time to find out the right kind of variables. I will have to refer to several newspaper articles, news, reviews. I'll have to take some expert opinions. I'll have to do an extensive literature review to arrive at the right kind of a set of variables which will have an impact on Reliance share prices. I just don't want to get into that. That is another branch, or that is another area of study. I just want to know the movement of Reliance's stock prices. Are they affected by its own lagged values or not? That is the only objective I am laying down to start with. Okay. And I understand that not all how a price is affected, how a stock price is affected. Okay. The stock prices are affected by several factors. You just get into this field and you will find out there are several factors, several reasonings which can be given to have some kind of a relationship with the movement of stock prices. The stock prices are a function of several factors which are reflected in its prices. Okay. News has an impact. Any positive news or apprehension of a news. Okay, before the declaration of results, you will have observed, if you follow the stock markets carefully, you will find out that before the results are declared, there is an apprehension building up in the investors, and stock prices tend to increase. They have some expectations from the results which will come from the company. It may come as per their expectation, it may go against their expectation. Immediately the reactions can be seen in the prices, going further up if it meets the expectations and falling down if it does not fulfill their expectations. So it's not that Reliance is doing good or bad, it's about the investors' expectation for the movement of price of Reliance. This is at the micro level. Any news or any announcement with respect to tax cuts for the corporate can be received by the investors, and it can be reflected in increasing prices for that particular stock. Price is nothing but a interaction of demand and supply. With the limited, if the demand for buying or purchasing the limited number of shares into the stock market, the price is going to go up, and vice versa. So that's the kind of behavior which is happening. So what I'm saying here is there are several factors or news which comes into the stock market which can affect the movement of a univariate time series. In our case, it's a Reliance stock price. But does every news affect it? Not necessarily. We have to differentiate between whether this news is a news which gives a signal, positive or negative, that's another story, or it is just a noise. We say noise is for the sake of noise. Not every news will have a relevant impact on the price of Reliance. So we have to differentiate. Several news are coming up into the stock market or in the environment. What is relevant, what is not relevant? Okay. So what is relevant should reflect into the movement of stock prices. That should be accounted for in the auto-regressive process. Later on we'll discuss this, what it's related to. Your auto-regressive process, if it is significant, it means that signaling effect of a news has been captured into the stock prices. But if your moving averages, which is the noise or the residuals, is significant, that means there is a lot of white noise which is prevailing. So for making predictions, an investor should be able to, or an analyst should be in a position to differentiate between what is noise and what is a signal. In this equation, E here, the error. I never discussed about error so far. This error has to be understood. In most of the equations and models, we say E is equal to 0, and we read it, okay, if it is equal to 0, it has no significance. It's very important. It's not only important to identify the movement of a time series, identify the right kind of variables to, in case of bivariate time series, to make projections or to dig out from extensive literature review several variables which can affect a time series, but it's equally important to read this E, which is error. Okay, so I'm sure what I'm trying to do with this discussion is two things. An investor as well as an analyst should be in a position to identify or differentiate between the signal and white noise. Signal is what is right to make a forecast. White noise is something that you should avoid. Your time series should not have white noise. बेवजह का शोर नहीं होना चाहिए. आप ऐसी चीजें हटा दीजिए अपने टाइम सीरीज से जो आपके फोरकास्ट को अफेक्ट करेंगे. Right? So how do you know that this data or display of data or this process is white noise or not? So we will see that how to identify a white noise process, right? Okay.